Hey there, everybody. Hello, hello. Waiting for a few more people to join us. Hello, we out here. Oh, hey, we're out here. Me too. Nice to see you guys. I'm glad you are joining me on a Wednesday afternoon, or as I've started calling all of them Blur's Day, because they all just blur together. But hope you are doing fine. Let's wait a couple minutes for a few more people to join, but we're going to talk about how to write gratitude letters today. And I'm so excited for the sample that I just got fresh off the presses, which I'll tell you about when we're talking. So nice to see you all. Hello, everybody. Give it a couple more minutes to see who else is going to join us. Compared to my last Instagram Live for Mom 2.0, I now know how to pin a comment and save the videos. So learning new skills, just trying to make quarantine count, I guess. But yeah, I'm glad to see everybody here. I guess I'm going to get started. I know we don't have too much time to do this. I'm sure everybody is super busy. So my name is Nancy Davis Coe, and I am a blogger and a podcaster. My blog is called Midlife Mixtape, and the podcast is the same name. And it's all about the years between being hip and breaking one. So I've been blogging since 2011, which felt like a late start, but now it feels like it was an eternity ago. And last year I published a book called The Thank You Project, Cultivating Happiness, One Letter of Gratitude at a Time. And the book is about a year that I spent writing one thank you letter every week to someone who had helped or shaped or inspired me. And I started writing these letters because it was kind of a celebration of, feeling like I was reaching a certain point in life. I wanted to acknowledge that, hey Laura, thanks for joining. I wanted to acknowledge all the good things that were happening in my life at that point. And of course, pretty quickly, the whole year turned around and it was horrible. And it turned out that writing these thank you letters became a really important coping mechanism to get through a hard time. Now, I didn't set out to write a letter that was, or to write a book that was perfect for a pandemic, but I do think that some of the things that I learned in writing my letters and in writing the Thank You Project book are really applicable, especially applicable right now. So we're going to talk real nuts and bolts about how to write a good gratitude letter, but I just want to give a little background because I want you to understand why this works so well and how I'm the one to give you the message, basically. So, in the course of writing these 50 letters, every week, I wrote mine once a week. Every week, when I sat down to write my letter, I could already feel my shoulders settling and my stress level going down and sort of, my jaw unclenching. And so when I wrote the book, I wanted to understand why did I have this kind of physical reaction to it, and then the psychological reaction, which was that I always felt so much better when I finished one of the letters. And it turns out there's a ton of science on this. Gratitude and happiness are really tightly coupled. If you can make a deliberate expression of gratitude, whether it's in a letter you write or simply by stopping and saying to yourself, okay, what are 3 things I can be thankful for right now? You are signaling to your body that it's okay, calm down. Your blood pressure starts to lower. People sleep better at night when they have a deliberate expression of gratitude. You even can control asthma better. There's all kinds of benefits to doing this. And it all comes down to what's called positive recall bias. So that is kind of training your brain to look for positive things around you. And we all have this sense of negative recall bias. We're born with it. It's important. You have to be able to sense when something bad's going to happen so you can jump out of the way of the runaway truck, or you can not shake hands during a pandemic. And that's great. But the problem is if you get stuck in negative recall bias, and I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the second I get on Twitter, I have just given myself like the fast lane to negative recall bias. I can only see the bad things that are happening. But luckily I know from writing these letters that I can stop and take a beat, Think of something positive, think of something to be grateful for, and science shows that that does the most effective job. It's one of the very most effective ways to quell that negative recall bias. So that's just a little bit of background about why gratitude letters work. And in the book, I talk a lot about more about the science, but also about, the ways that you can use this to really boost your mood. But today, I'm just going to assume you believe me. I'm not going to go into all that. I'm going to just guess, oh, hey, Lori. So nice to see all of you joining on. Thank you for taking a minute in the middle of your day. I'm just going to assume you're convinced, and if you're not, I'll just keep working on it. And we're going to talk about exactly how to write a gratitude letter, because I know from talking to readers and to talking, at my events, it can feel a little overwhelming, and nobody needs one more thing to do right now. Nobody needs another thing to put on their list. We're all feeling stressed. You may have kids at home. You may, be trying to work from home and sharing duties with a partner. I don't even want to go into all the different things you may be doing as a result of the pandemic. Me, I'm growing out my hair. I'm calling it this pandemic ombre. It's not dark roots, it's pandemic ombre. So go ahead and use that if you need to. But what the gratitude letters, I think, are a little bit different, because it's not something else you have to do. It's kind of an invitation to you to think about someone in your life who's been a really positive influence for you. So that's the starting point. Step one, the first thing you do is I want you to think of somebody who's made your life better. And, friend, family member, someone you live with. I wrote letters to my husband and my kids. I wrote letters to my parents, my siblings. Just think about somebody who you're always happy to see because they're going to make you feel good. Now, the more practiced you get at this, you can start tackling some harder letters. I ended up writing letters to, terrible bosses. I didn't send all my letters. So you can think about ex-boyfriends and girlfriends, or you can think about, places you've lived maybe that, have had an influence on you. But start with the easy ones. So step one is just think of somebody who has changed your life in a positive way. Write that down. And if there are a few names you can think of, write them all down, because already, just by writing that down, you're already firing the synapses in your brain that help you find the positive rather than the negative in these situations. What the scientists say is the neurons that fire together wire together, and it just means that your brain can get better and more efficient at looking for positive things if you make it look for positive things. So make that list, just write down those names, and you're already a step further than you were before. Step two is the brainstorming part. And this part I love because, again, even without writing anything down, you're already accessing the benefits of that gratitude thinking. You're already, firing that positive recall bias. So here's what I did. I wrote a letter once a week on Friday, and totally arbitrary. You do whatever you want to do. But for me, that meant that I had a whole week to think about the person who I was going to send a letter to and to think about what I might want to include in that. And I would think about this person while I was driving to my kid to high school, or while I was taking a hike or whatever. And it is an invitation to kind of think about why am I thinking of this person? What is it that makes them so important to me? So my example I'm going to share is my friend Andrea, who lives in my neighborhood here in Oakland. We met when our 22-year-olds were 5. We met in kindergarten, back to school night. And one of the things about Andrea is that my kids adore her. She's the second mom. On the school emergency contact list, it was my name, my husband's name, Andrea's name, and all the admins knew, just skip the husband, call Andrea if there's a problem with the kids and you can't reach Nancy. So she was really formative to my kids because they just had this deep level of trust and affection for her. She's also a really good gardener. And I'm the opposite of that. I am the person who looks at plants in a nursery and they just die proactively because they don't want to come home with me. So, she has always given me great advice. She landscaped a whole section of my front yard. She'll come over and say, you need to water this more, you got to trim, whatever. She's like, she cares, I don't. And so I was, so even in the process of thinking about just those things, I'm reminding myself that I have this person in my life who really cares enough for me to take an interest in my kids, to take an interest in the garden. And so the story I ended up putting in the letter to her was something that embodied both of those things. When one of my daughters was a junior in high school, she had a medical procedure, and it was fine. She's fine. But she had to undergo anesthesia. And my husband was out of town, and it all came up very quickly. And long story short, I'm with my 5'9" daughter. We'd just gotten released from the hospital, and she was so doped up on anesthesia. And I was thinking, how am I going to get this child down the stairs into my house from the street? Because she's taller than I am. So without hesitation, I called Andrea and said, you need to meet me at my house. You got to help me get this girl into her bed. And I didn't hesitate for a minute. I knew she's the kind of friend that would do that for me. And not only did she, I pulled up, of course she was in my house weeding my garden, because that's the kind of person she is. And she could tell I needed help on multiple fronts. So that was the incident I included in the letter. So that's really what the brainstorming is. Just thinking about specifics are really important. It's not enough to say, oh, Andrea's nice. I think it's much more meaningful to you and to the recipient to think deeply about what does that look like for you? Why is that important to you? And the other way you can think about it as you're brainstorming is, if you had a problem and you had to phone a friend, what kind of problem would that person be called for? What's the thing you would go to that person for? So in my case, when it's a career issue, when I'm trying to figure out what my long-term strategy is on various career things, I call my sister. If I have an ache in my back and I don't know what to do, I call my friend Dawn. She's a physical therapist, and she always has I didn't mean to say always has my back, but she does. So, this is the kind of the challenge to you. Think really specifically about this person you're going to write to. What are the very specific things that they do for you? And just think about it. For me, I didn't take notes or anything. I know some people like to do that. But, just try to get some source material. And the good news is, all through that process, all through that thinking, while you're driving around or walking around or going within 1 mile that's allowed around your house, you are doing that hard work of putting yourself into a gratitude mindset, and kind of forging those paths that make it easier for next time. So when you feel like you have enough material, or too much material hopefully, you're going to go to step 3, which is actually writing the letter. And I'm going to break down my process for you. It's spelled out pretty clearly in the book. And also what is clear in the book is that this is my approach to it. If this doesn't feel right for you, there are no thank you note police. You are allowed to do whatever makes it comfortable for you and whatever feels replicable, because it's really important to me that you don't see this as a chore you got to check off the list and, thank God I'm done with that. But I hope that by writing these, you'll think, oh, that was great. Who can I write to next? So make sure you pick a format and a process that feels like it fits your lifestyle. There's nobody looking over your shoulder telling you whether you're doing it right or wrong. But that being said, this is what worked well for me. The first paragraph of the letter, I would always start with why I'm writing to you. So my letters usually started off with, frankly, cut and paste paragraph that maybe I zhuzhed it up a little bit for the person. But I basically said, I'm turning 50 this year. It's made me really reflective of how I've gotten here, who's been helpful to me, and you belong on that list, and I'm so grateful for you. So just, you might say, I'm having a pandemic, and I felt like I wanted to write a letter to people who I'm thinking of and people who I miss. You could, there's so many different ways to do that, but I do think giving the reader a little bit of an introduction about why they're holding this letter in their hand is helpful. They just give them some context. Second paragraph, how did you meet this person? If it's to your mother, I hope you can't remember that, or you should be in some very deep therapy. But virtually everyone else, okay, maybe not your dad either, but you can start with how you met this person and what was that spark that started the relationship. Because I think it's kind of cool. I think when you think back, like, why did you pick this person to be in your life rather than somebody else? What was that moment? And I did a presentation on this topic last week to a bunch of 8th graders whose teacher was one of my 50 people who got a letter. She and I met in 9th grade, and I don't remember the story this way, but she talked about the fact that she knew we would be friends because I was wearing a turtleneck that had horses printed on it, and she too loved horses. And what's so funny is neither one of us has ridden in probably 20 years. But, those kinds of things are kind of fun to think back about how you met the person. So that's paragraph 2, and I think that's just like a nice little way to start. Then the rest of the letter are those memories. What are the ways specifically in which the person has helped you? So you could start sentences with, I'm so grateful to you for the way you fill in the blank. You could say, I remember one time, fill in the blank, and this is why that was so meaningful to me. And I think what's cool about that construct is a lot of times we see something as life-changing and you know, really important, and the person who did it may never have known the import of what they did. And it's so cool for someone to say to you, you gave me a really good piece of advice while we were on a hike one day, and now I live my life by that advice, or something. We get influenced by so many different things, and I just think that's a cool kind of a thing, an insight to share in the story. You always help me when you blah, 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 blah. And like in my letter to Andrea, you are always there for me when I have I need help with my kids or my garden, because that's who you are and what you do. And another way to start it, you may not have realized it, but you inspired me when. And I wrote a letter to my minister. I'm a member of a very lefty liberal Episcopal church here in the Oakland Hills. And he has inspired me so many times by talking about the way we have to get out in the community. And, the motto of my church is, the church has left the building, because we're not supposed to be sitting inside reflecting. We're supposed to be out in the world making it better. And that message has come through in so many conversations I've had with him. And I know that it has informed the way that I look at my responsibility to the larger world. And so I made sure that that was in the letter I sent to him. So that's kind of the way you can think about those body paragraphs. I limited myself to a page. You can write longer, you can write shorter, you can do whatever you want. This is your thank you letter that you're writing. And then my closing paragraph was always some kind of forward-looking thought, because I didn't want people to think I was dying or breaking up with them. I wanted it to be, when the pandemic's over, let's grab a coffee. Can't wait to see you at the cat club so we can do some 80s dancing. Something to tell them that, it's not over. So that is the structure that I used to write a thank you letter. And I mentioned that I spoke last week to some 8th graders. Their teacher was really hoping that I could help them find some closure, because they are, everybody's talking about high school seniors and college seniors, one of which I have, a college senior, and how hard that is that they're not getting closure. But 8th graders probably feel this way too, because there's a lot on their minds as they're getting ready to go to 9th grade. So after I spoke with them, the assignment was that they each wrote a thank you letter, and my friend started sending some of them through to me today, and I don't know this person, and I'm going to make sure this is anonymous, but this guy wrote a beautiful gratitude letter using exactly the structure I just explained to you, and I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to redact because I don't want to get him or his friends in trouble, but it's perfect. So again, written by an 8th grader. Dear name, I remember when we first met in kindergarten. I was in the Red Ladybugs, and I believe you were in the Golden Monkeys. We became quick friends. You helped me to get to know the other kids who weren't in my class and played with me during lunch and recess. You were my friend through elementary school and much longer. He's in 8th grade. One thing that immediately comes to mind when I think of you is how much you make me laugh. You always have funny stories and jokes that make me also want to give people a good laugh. What a great thing to inspire somebody else to do. The story we both shared was how Spencer fell off the top bunk in 4th grade in Gold Country. In California, all the kids go to Gold Country for a field trip, so glad I wasn't one of the chaperones on that trip. He says, you also share a love of the same sports as me, basketball and football. We were on many different teams together. I remember when you made a game-winning catch in our last game of the season in flag football. You also got me to play soccer at lunchtime, which got me closer to classmates I wouldn't normally talk to. So you see, he's doing this beautifully. This is the action you took. This is how it changed my life for the better. It's perfect. This is my favorite paragraph. I don't have boys, so I can just enjoy this. I always looked forward to when we could get to hang out and do all the dumb things we did. We cracked eggs on our foreheads, exploded sodas, and gambled our money in Texas Hold'em. He says, I could go on and on about all the fun things we did together. The most important thing I take away from our friendship is how to have fun. You just need a couple of friends and something to screw around with. I mean, that's a beautiful letter. And that is an 8th grader writing. If you have kids at home, you know, I think this is a really great thing to engage with your kids, to encourage your kids to try. But definitely for yourself, especially now we're all in need of, you know, feelings of connection. We all need reminders that we are connected to the larger world. And I think it's also helpful to remember that we have faced troubles before. When you're writing these letters, you're kind of going back through what are problems I've had, obstacles I've had, and how did this specific person help me through it. And I think it's a good reminder that you've always had help come to you if you've needed it, and you will again, and you can be that person now. And yeah, so that is, and oh, and my final thing is, imagine finding this letter when the recipient is 40 years old, and when he rereads this at 40, that is going to be gold. What a nice thing to have on hand to remind you of the way your life was when you were in 8th grade. So that's it. I'm going to see if we have any questions. Let's see if I can even do that. And hey, everybody, I'm so glad to see you there. I see a 30-plus mom. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look like we have any questions, but hopefully you guys will reflect on this. The book is called The Thank You Project. If you want more details, it's got lots of ideas for the kinds of people you might want to write to: teachers, mentors, co-workers, all kinds of people. But I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And, oh, good. Laura's just here running her mouth. Of course. Love you guys, Mom 2.0 folks. I really hope we see each other this fall. I'm looking forward to it. And don't forget to tune in on Friday. There's going to be more programming on Friday. And I wish you guys all good things and stay healthy. And, you know, now that we've watched the video, everybody should go wash their hands. Why not? All right, take care, you guys. Thanks again.